August 27th, 2020, and I would like to call this meeting of the Human Resources to order. In the interest of public health and safety, and pursuant to the Governor's Executive Order N-2920, members of the Civil Service Commission and staff are participating in the meeting by teleconference. In accordance with the executive order, the public may view this meeting online, but not in the Public Services Building A, room 103A. The city launched a virtual commenting portal, e-comment, that allows residents to comment and participate in the meeting from their own homes. You can find the link to e-comment at www.chulavistaca.gov/boards to view online. Your comments must be received before I call for the close of the commenting period to be considered. After the commenting period is closed, I will announce a brief pause to allow commissioners time to read any comments that have been received. If you have difficulty or need any assistance with e-comment during the meeting, please call 619-409-5927 and Human Resources staff will assist you. Would the secretary please call the roll?
Commissioner Felix?
Present.
Commissioner Godinez? Commissioner Gonzalez?
There.
Oh. I know she's here. Oh, there she is. All right. Commissioner Gutierrez? Okay. Commissioner Kinayu?
Present.
Commissioner Lake?
Present. Thank you.
Commissioner Medina? All right. Commissioner Ratner?
Present.
Commissioner Zadab? Vice Chair Branch?
Present.
And Chair Martinez Montes.
Present. Okay, so the first order of business is the consent calendar. I would like to call for a 2-minute pause to allow the public to submit any final comments on items on the consent calendar. Commissioners, as a reminder, please refresh the view on your screen to ensure that new comments appear.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Human Relations Commission, this is Ed Chu of the IT department. I would like to remind everyone to please mute their microphones, including staff members. There's lots of paper rustling and stuff going on in the background, which is cutting off some of the speaking. So please be mindful of being on mute until you need to speak. Thanks.
And can you please display the public comment slide and start the timer?
Excuse me, well, that's Wayne. This is Commissioner Gutierrez. I keep losing connection to the site for some reason.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
I said I keep losing connection to the site. So when you did the roll call, I wasn't sure if you got my here or not. I disconnected.
I saw you on there, so I marked you as present.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And Anne, I don't see a timer, but I'm assuming you're keeping track of the 2 minutes.
I am keeping track. Sorry. Yes. I'll announce shortly. We got about another minute. Time.
Thank you, Anne. The commenting period for this item is now closed. And I don't see that there are any comments. Have commissioners had enough time to review? Do any commissioners wish to pull an item for discussion or questions? No? Is there a motion to approve the items on the consent calendar?
I'll go ahead and motion that.
I have comments on the minutes.
I'm sorry, I missed, who made the,
I have
Was there
comments on the minutes. Excuse me?
William made the motion. I'll second it.
Is this for the consent calendar?
I'm sorry, there was just a motion to approve the consent calendar by Commissioner Felix and seconded by Commissioner Kinayu.
I have comments on the minutes.
Okay,
On the minutes, under public comments, it says there was 3 received, but they were not identified.
The comments are located underneath the individual action item that the comment came in for.
Okay, so even though it's under public comment, okay, so we had 2 for one item and 1 for the other item? And that's
Correct.
3? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
That's all.
Okay.
there were no changes?
No.
It was just a question? Okay, so I do have a motion and a second. Motion by Commissioner Felix, seconded by Commissioner Kinayu. Would the secretary please conduct roll?
Yes. Commissioner Felix.
Aye.
All right. Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
Commissioner Gutierrez.
Yes,
Commissioner Kinayu. Commissioner Lake.
Aye.
Commissioner Ratner.
Aye.
Vice Chair Branch.
Aye.
And Chair Martinez Montes.
Aye. The consent calendar passes unanimously. So public comment in this section on the agenda for members in the public to address the board on the items that are not listed on the agenda. I will now call for a 2-minute pause to allow for public comment to submit any final public comments. Commissioners, as a reminder, please refresh the view on your screen to ensure new comments appear.
And can you please display the public comment slide and start the timer?
Can I ask for commissioners to go to place their microphones on mute?
No, I just took down the shoe bag.
And your slide is not coming up correctly. All we see is the end of slideshow. So you may need to just, there you go.
Strange. Oh my gosh. All right, the time is up.
Thank you. The commenting period for public comment is now closed. Have commissioners had enough time to read the submitted comments? Can I ask the secretary to announce for the record the number of comments received?
We had 0 comments received.
Thank you. We'll move into action items. The next item is agenda number 2. And we have a presentation.
So, sorry, folks. Okay. Oh my goodness. So, the next item is about several updates that we've discussed sharing with you, and I'm going to start with the EOC update. This was shared at council on Tuesday night. Although I updated it to inform you that it has been 167 days since the city of Chula Vista declared its emergency operations center to be open to respond to the coronavirus pandemic. So that's a long time. So here is some information just for you to know. The total case numbers continue to go down in the county, which is a good thing, but a lot of the cases are still in South County. But you can see on the previous slide and now this one that these, we had some highs here earlier in July, but the numbers continue to go down on a weekly and daily basis. The goal that got us, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, let me show this one as well. We now have information on daily cases in the city of Chula Vista, and I believe commissioners know that actually South County with Chula Vista, National City, Imperial Beach, and San Isidro, that we do have many of the cases, most of the cases, highest percentage in the county. But the cases in Chula Vista continue to go down as well, again, which is a good thing. We're now getting data from the county per zip code. So you can see here, we just started getting it this week. Oh my gosh. But you can see in our Chula Vista zip codes, the numbers of positives, the numbers of negatives, and the percentage positives, et cetera. So those numbers continue to go down as well. These are the numbers that the county monitors and the state monitors, and what got us on the monitoring list was number 1, the case rate, number 2, community outbreaks, and I believe the third one was the testing. So because we are now down to just one area of concern, when you hit 3 of these metrics, that's when you go on the governor's watch list. So now we are below, my goodness, the case rates are below 100 per 100,000 population. So we're around 80 right now, 80 cases per 100,000 population. But an interesting comment that was made by our epidemiologist, Dr. McDonald, the other day is that really to have there be a lot less spreading, a lot less, communicable, distribution of the disease in our community, we need to be around 25 cases per 100,000. So that was kind of a sobering number to hear from Dr. McDonald. So it's good that we were up in the 130s per 100,000 population, now that we're down in the 80s, but to really feel really good about all of this, we need to get down to the 20s. So it means stay vigilant, wash your hands, wear your mask, et cetera, et cetera. What we're also watching is the hospitalizations. Those continue to go down as well, which is a good thing in the region. And that was the conclusion of the EOC update. As you know, we have a team that monitors this every day. A number of us are on the EOC, what they call the policy group. Each of our department heads and the communications person, our emergency operations coordinator, Marlon King, whom you saw last month. So we continued to monitor the situation and work with the county. We do have a number of test sites down here, and we're actually going to open another test site. The location's being finalized, but we're going to use our EMTs who've gone through actually Southwestern EMTs to help do additional testing in the county. So we're working with the county to get the tests, and we're going to set up the site and continue to provide more opportunities for testing in South County. It won't be just for Chula Vista residents. It'll be located here, though. So the next item that I wanted to share with you, I have a list of things to discuss with you. So our CARES funding was approved Tuesday night at the City Council meeting, and we've received a total of $4.8 million from the county CARES allocation and $3.4 million from the state CARES allocation. And the county funds must be spent by September 30th. And the state funds must be spent by December 30th. So our finance team, working with the department heads and the policy group, outlined the spending of those funds. And it is going to a number of activities, and I'll give you a little more information with my update: rental assistance, our small business grants, our food programs, public health expenses, and a lot of overtime for people who have been working to support the effort here in Chula Vista. So those funds are being, there are certain restrictions or requirements for how they're spent, but they're going back into the community, and they're really helping us to do the testing, to do the food distribution, and a lot of these emergency services at this time. The eviction moratorium continues. It's now through 30th. Council took another action for another 30-day extension of our moratorium, and also Councilmember Padilla and Deputy Mayor Galvez are a subcommittee also taking a look at the eviction moratorium and maybe what that should look like going forward. For now, the same moratorium has been in place for the last 6 months or so, but the council members are looking into what some of the state actions are that are being considered for how we need to continue to address the threat of evictions here in our community. Food distribution continues. South Bay Community Services, Community Through Hope, working with the food bank. Our food distribution efforts continue. We continue to have opportunities for emergency food distribution as needed. So that continues in the community. Census 2020 continues. There was a census outreach effort coordinating with the census last week, and Councilmember Diaz was on television, encouraging people to do the census. We're at about 70% here, which actually close to 71% response rate, and which for many of us we wouldn't want to see, but that is good that we're there. But we're going to continue the push all the way through September to encourage people to go online and fill out the census. But the census takers are also out there as well, so we're communicating that. A little information about, let me look at my notes. I'm sorry. My colleagues provided information on, the rental assistance program. So that is being, the city of Chula Vista is collaborating with South Bay Community Services for a rental assistance program. People can apply to get up to $6,500 for low and moderate income households who are facing hardships because of COVID. Bilingual staff are helping with the outreach and the information to process those applications. So that's ongoing as well. We have been communicating a lot and been providing access in Spanish and other languages as needed during the pandemic, during this emergency time, providing information in Spanish, our signage. I just submitted another sign for translation into Spanish. So we really are emphasizing making sure that people have the information they need in the language they need. And as an FYI, and I think we've shared this with you before, but when you call 211, they have also can provide services in a number of languages to help our community in our county with what they need during the pandemic. Our community and homeless outreach effort continues, and so we've increased funding for senior meal delivery. We've funding for study hall childcare options for families returning to work. I think we shared last time we did Wi-Fi hotspot distribution, and we're working with the schools to expand that now that school is going back to work. I mean, school is going back in session. We're also another program that's starting. We're collaborating with the Workforce Partnership to provide it's a program Workforce Partnership does, but it's a tech to hire job training program. So people who want to get into the tech field. So we provided funding for Chula Vista residents to join this tech to hire job training program. So that we are finalizing details with Workforce Partnership for them to start implementing that program on our behalf, or allowing us to join that program. And then more on economic development. So also some of the CARES Fund, $1.5 million, an initial funding of $1.5 million was allocated for small business grants. And this was for businesses that did not receive any other funding through the various measures that have been announced at the local, state, and federal level. We are now processing approximately 300 applications for the small business grants. Staff's finalizing the review, and the maximum was $6,000 per person. And there are some requirements to get the funding. So the 1.5 million will cover about 300 applicants. So hopefully everyone who's applied based on what they've requested will be able to provide those needed funds. And then we wanted to share with you, this went to council on Tuesday night. Our economic development team is developing our inclusive economic development program. I mean, we already have a number of things in place, but we're gathering more data on minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, and veteran-owned businesses for an inclusive economic development effort. We're working on a resource guide that will collaborate with our chambers and our small business development centers on. We're going to participate with more with service organizations to assist us in making sure that we're reaching out and working with our minority, women, and veteran-owned businesses to make the right connections. And we're also working on our procurement policies to gather data on where the city spends its money and develop policies that can keep those expenditures with local companies, like, office supplies. We don't need to order them online. Let's use a local business. So those things are underway because of and in spite of the pandemic, and we continue to work on that with our community and with the various organizations and nonprofits we work with in all of these various areas. So I'm happy to answer any questions on that piece of it, on that update. I see Commissioner Gonzalez's hand.
Thank you, Ann. I had a question about the procurement. Was it DBEs specific, or were you guys going to define your own definition of a small business?
Well, we already have procurement measures in place, but we're looking to see what we could do to enhance it. For example, the council took an action several years ago on, how to allow more points for businesses that are local, because sometimes that's not allowed. It's supposed to be, low bid no matter what, and that kind of thing. So we're looking at options for expanding beyond existing measures that are out there.
Okay, thank you, Anne. Before we open it up for additional questions, I would like to call for a 2-minute pause to allow public comment to submit any final comment on the item before commission deliberation. Commissioners, as a reminder, refresh the view on your screen to ensure that comments appear.
Did you start the timer too, Anne?
I did start the timer.
Thank you.
Okay, that's 2 minutes.
There were 0 comments received.
Thank you. Do commissioners have comments or questions for staff? Commissioner Kinayu?
And can you tell me if they're still making efforts to reach out to people without the internet, where most of the information is being disseminated, and to households that don't have the ability to get to the food distribution centers because they don't have transportation and can't take the bus?
So yes, that's what I'll do the food one first. That's the emergency food distribution. That's where we're helping people with that. We're still continuing to do some deliveries for in emergency situations where people can't get to us or to the food distribution. And yes, we have been doing more outreach in Spanish through Spanish language media, and we're working with other media partners to develop some ads, some more messaging to go out to the community. So that's what we're doing. And I know that promotoras are also working out in the community right now. I don't know all the specifics, but the promotoras are working out in the community as well, through the county, but also in our region about, resources during the pandemic.
Okay, thank you. Anne, and I see Commissioner Branch.
I have a couple questions about the eviction moratorium. Just to understand how it works, is it a situation where landlords are not permitted to file the eviction action, or eviction actions that have been filed are not allowed to be executed? And then is there any provision for when the moratorium ends for people to have a payback period, or will we possibly see a huge number of evictions that were pending happen, immediately?
So
I've got this, Ann.
thank you.
Hi, very, very good questions. In response to your first question, it is both. The way we've drafted our ordinance, they're not allowed to initiate or file or obtain any sort of order for eviction from the courts. Not even allowed to issue 3-day notice to quit, as long as the tenant is kind of qualified for protection for the eviction moratorium. That's going to be even more important after September 1st. You may have heard that the Judicial Council that had adopted and implemented a rule for the courts that prohibited at the court level any actions along the involving unlawful detainers has now sunset that provision as of September 1st. So as of September 2nd, in Chula Vista and other places, really only the local eviction moratorium is in place to afford the protections for people who are adversely impacted by COVID or unable to pay rent. Your point and question regarding payments after the eviction moratorium expires is dead on, and that's exactly when Ms. Steinberger referred to the kinds of rules that the subcommittee and the council are talking about implementing. The kinds of rules they're really focused on are the rules that would establish the terms for tenants who had to defer rent during the moratorium period to have adequate time to repay that rent and still be able to avoid eviction until adequate time. So if you want to keep track of that, you can certainly make inquiries with me. I'm kind of the lead staff person along with Leilani Hines, working with Councilmember Padilla and Deputy Mayor Galvez to kind of come up with recommendations for the council regarding that. Currently, our eviction moratorium does include provisions to address that issue, but at this point, they're only guidelines and they're not mandatory.
Thank you.
I do have a question. Thank you for your response. And it is my understanding that the eviction moratorium that the city of Chula Vista currently has in place is the strongest in the county. So that's definitely a good thing. In terms of the rental assistance program that is currently being implemented with South Bay Community Center, this was prior to CARES Act funding being used. So my question is more in regards to whether or not there are any restrictions on who can apply for the rental assistance programs. I know that in different places, immigrant families have been left out of being able to apply for such programs. And so I just wanted to make sure to ask on, in terms of the city of Chula Vista, like how we're navigating any restrictions that there could be or maybe.
Glenn, are you aware of any?
No, I'm not. I would be very surprised if there was any restriction related to immigration status. We could get those, and I wish Leilani was here because she'd probably know this cold, but we could certainly get that information from South Bay Community Services, make that available to the commission to describe that. That would give you more information about the specifications for the program.
Yes, my notes say that it's it's up to $6,500 to low and moderate income households facing a hardship paying their rent. That's with, and it's a COVID related hardship. So, but I'll look, while we're talking, I'll look up South Bay Community Services to see if there's anything on their website because the application is through them. So.
Yeah, I definitely think for, you know, reasons of us being a welcoming city, it would be important for us to not restrict immigrant families from being able to access that. So that was my question. Any other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Gonzalez?
I had a question. How does the city council decide if it's going to extend the moratorium?
The way that the set up currently, we've got a provision that allows them to extend the moratorium by resolution. So we're expecting, staff's expecting to come back to them, hopefully with specifications from the ad hoc subcommittee regarding whether or not they're going to extend, and regardless what post-moratorium rules we'd be proposing for the council to adopt regarding those repayment terms and schedule. I'm not sure what meeting we're going to come back to. My guess is the last meeting in September.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there's no other questions or comment on this item, we will move into item number 3. Does staff have a presentation on this?
No, this was placed on the agenda per Commissioner Felix, I believe.
Yeah, so this is a consideration of a resolution for the city council to take official action to recognize essential workers during COVID-19. And we discussed this during the last meeting and said we would bring it back to see if there was something that our commission wanted to take action on. Commissioner Felix, do you want to walk us through what your idea was behind this?
Yeah, it was just an official, declaration resolution, just really, providing, being grateful for essential workers in Chula Vista, including, city staff, first responders, but also people who kept our grocery stores open and our daycares open, and I'm sure that the city council has on multiple occasions since this happened has, said some praise about all these workers, but maybe just have like an official, resolution that we can present to the council, or the council can adopt. Just maybe even making Essential Workers Day, like, like have a special day where it's for essential workers who had to man the lines, or work while we had to stay home. Mhm.
And I'm sorry, before we continue on the discussion, I believe we have to open it up for 2 minutes to allow public to submit any final comment on the item before commission deliberation.
Actually, Chair, if I could just ask, what's the terminology for when the council, like, is it a resolution or a proclamation, or just kind of like a whereas on during the, what are those called again? Are they proclamations?
I believe they're proclamations.
Okay. Yeah.
So we call for the 2 minutes now. I'm sorry, Glenn, do we call for the 2 minutes now?
It's really in the discretion, Madam Chair. You could, the key thing is you're certainly allowed to deliberate and speculate on things, but you should certainly allow, before you actually take action, public comment to occur. So if you think you've had reasonable amount of discussion and presentation of the idea already, it would be appropriate at this time to take public comment, and then the group can deliberate further.
Okay, so why don't we deliberate then before we see if there's anything that we need to take action on. So Commissioner Felix just laid out what his idea was. How do others feel?
It sounds like a good idea.
I have a comment to make.
Commissioner Gutierrez?
Yes, I agree with this in concept, but does this really fall under our purpose and scope of the commission?
I mean, I think that's a question for all of us to decide.
Okay. That was my question.
I mean, I definitely see the point raised. I absolutely agree in the idea of extending gratitude for the work that both the city of Chula Vista employees have been doing, and that essential workers have been faced with every single day, risking their lives.
And I concur with that. It's just that does it fall under our scope? That's all.
Or is it superfluous? I mean, if there's the city already generally is having something like this, I mean, we can sign on with the city. I mean, the concept's really good. I don't know if separate commissions have to bring this forth, or if it can just be done as a whole group.
I see Commissioner Lake.
Hi, so I just did a quick search to see if there was any other proclamations out there by other cities. And I just came across one that is signed by a mayor. It looks like it's a city called Lock Haven. I'm not sure where that is, but there are other proclamations out there, and this one's really, really general. So I don't know if we could perhaps bring something back next meeting with sample language, and then we could decide whether it's in our purview, or if we want to decide whether it's in our purview now. But I like the idea. I think that our commission is outward looking, and we are moving forward with things, and we are bringing stuff to city council and to the mayor in a way that is effective. So I'm supportive of it.
Or can we ask the city staff who've attended, meetings since this happened, have they mentioned anything? I mean, I'm sure they said thank you to our firemen, thank you to our first responders and our doctors, all that good stuff. But have they mentioned, like, I don't know. I mean, I know it's something that shouldn't really be said, the thank you, but I mean, have they, like, I don't know, have they said anything or?
So yes, I mean, the mayor has definitely commented it along the way. I mean, we're still in it. I mean, when Mayor did her State of the City speech, her virtual one, she's the only one in the room, basically, she addressed it. So, so I would say yes to that question. They've definitely been recognized along the way, and there have been update presentations. For example, Fire was just there talking about the fire season, and they thanked all the fire department. They talked about how they're deployed, throughout the state because of the fires right now. So, yes, as it's come up, definitely I would say the council has thanked them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would, if I could add to that, I do think the mayor makes a regular point, and council members make a pretty regular habit in their comments of issuing thanks to, I don't know if they named every category, Commissioner Felix, that you did, but from time to time, different ones of those in a broad sense. So I don't think there's a lack of and I think it's being shown. But they have not issued, any formal, recognition or a day or proclamation clearly yet. So that they haven't done.
And again, I think if I may, I agree with the concept of this being something that we want our city council and mayor to acknowledge. If our council and mayor had not, addressed this, and if they had totally dropped the ball on acknowledging the hard work by essential workers, I think absolutely it would totally be in a responsibility of ours to nudge them in the right direction. But being that they have been actively doing it, I would be, and because it would actually require, right, like some staff time to draft a resolution, move it through the process of adopting it through city council, get approvals, that I would actually I encourage us not to go through that process and just continue to pay attention, and maybe Commissioner Felix, like maybe we could reach out to the mayor and see if there's any energy for them to do it, but not use our body to do that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, everyone has their hands full, so I totally agree with that. Maybe since we're still within the pandemic, maybe hopefully soon, when this ends, maybe we can bring it back, and we can do a little, we can look back and say, we do thank them, but I agree, we don't want to add to their plate. I mean, because there's a lot going on right now. Yeah.
Does anyone else want to weigh in on this before we pause for 2 minutes for public comment? Okay, so why don't we pause for the 2 minutes to allow public comment to submit any final comment on the item before we make a final decision.
I'm going to start the timer and figure out how to get that posted. Sorry, commissioners. Time.
We have received 0 comments.
Okay, and I know there were, there were some of us that that felt like we should bring this forward. So is it appropriate to take a vote at this point? Or is it, I would hate to take a vote and, have it be on the record that we said no to adopting something like this, because I don't think that that's the spirit that we're talking about here. Maybe it's just leaving it as is and bringing it back at a later time.
From a legal standpoint, Madam Chair and Commission, just because it's on the agenda, there's no obligation for you to vote. It would be at the discretion of the group. If there's a motion and a second to take action on the resolution, then you would. But if the group consensus is to not take action and work along the lines as you and Commissioner Felix described, no action would be necessary.
Okay. And just for the record, is there a motion to move this forward, or are we okay with moving along? Okay. Okay, so we will move into item number 4, which is presentation by City Clerk regarding upcoming vote by mail election. Does staff have a presentation?
Hi, this is City Clerk Carrie Bigelow. Anne does have a slide she's going to put up on the screen here. So thank you for having me back to talk to you about the November 3rd, 2020 election. There are going to be some changes in the election that voters will notice due to the pandemic. So first, let's start with Chula Vista. So you may or may not know, Chula Vista's candidates are running for districts 3 and 4, and this is the runoff election from the March election. So these were the top 2 vote getters for each district that are moving forward to the November election for a runoff. So for District 3, it's Henry Martinez and the incumbent Steve Padilla. And District 4 is Andrea Cardenas and Mike Diaz. You can find out more about the candidates, including reading their candidate statements at chulavistaca.gov/vote. We also put their financial disclaimers and Form 700s and all of that information online. If you have any questions or want additional documentation or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be happy to help you or answer any questions that you have. Countywide, there are some changes, like I said, related to the pandemic. So all registered voters in San Diego County and actually throughout California are going to receive their ballot by mail for November. So right now in San Diego, or prior to this in San Diego County, there were about 75% of the county's registered voters that already received their ballots by mail. So this is just filling in everybody else, the other 25% who didn't already receive them by mail. The ballots have to be postmarked by Election Day on November 3rd, and they have to be received by the Registrar of Voters by November 20th in order for them to be counted. Ballots, if you don't want to mail them, you can also deliver them to the Registrar of Voters or any polling place or ballot drop-off location by 8 p.m. on Election Day. There will still be polling places available. They are almost certainly going to be different. If you go and vote in person, it'll almost certainly be a different polling place for you and your neighbors, because the county needs to create a safe voting environment as part of their charge. And most places where they held, most of the polling places didn't allow for proper social distancing, or people didn't want to offer up their locations in the current climate. And so the county was tasked with finding different locations. Most of them are much larger. Because they're different, there likely will be really long lines at them, because there also will be fewer polling places. So just be aware of that. In addition, the polling places are going to be open more days than they had been. So polling places will be open starting October 31st. And for the 31st, November 1st, and November 2nd, they'll be open from 8 to 5. And then on election day, they'll be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., which is standard voting polling place time for election day. So you will, if you do decide that you want to vote in person, you'll need to make sure to check what your polling place is and go to that polling place. If you've already filled out your ballot and it's in the envelope to return it by mail, you can drop it off at any polling location or at a ballot drop box. The county is also increasing the number of drop boxes that will be available throughout the county, and added quite a number of them in Chula Vista. We previously had them at our 2 libraries, and now they'll be at a number of our recreation centers as well. The registrar is still finalizing all the locations, so those will be made available here pretty shortly. And then the other thing that you can do if it's your first time voting by mail, or if you just want to see your ballot travel through the process, you can sign up for Where's My Ballot, and it's a service that will let you know where your ballot is in the process. So once it's in the mail, once it's been received, once it's been counted, you can do that at sdvote.com, and they have a link there just on their homepage. It's actually really cool. I signed up for it, and you can put in your email address and your cell phone number, and it'll text you and let you know where your ballot's at. And the other thing is, if you should have just received, or if you didn't just receive, you will receive in the next couple of days a postcard from the Registrar of Voters. And those are sent out to all the registered voters in the county to confirm that we have the right addresses for everyone and that everyone's name and their residence address is correct. So you'll want to make sure to double check that. If you've changed your name, you need to re-register to vote. If you've moved, you'll need to re-register to vote. So you can also check your voter registration at sdvote.com, and that'll ensure that you're properly registered for election day. The other last piece of information is that the ballots will be mailed out starting the week of October 5th. And you can actually vote as early as October 5th in person at the registrar's office. So you may want to plan in advance and go to one of the earlier, go on one of the earlier days to vote in person if that's how you prefer to vote. And otherwise, you'll get your ballot in the mail. It'll be complete with your I voted sticker, so you can wear that proudly on election day. So I'm available to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much for that presentation. That was very helpful. And I want to turn it over to commissioners to see if there's any questions or comments.
I have a question.
I'm sorry, because the screen is being shared, I can't see the boxes. Commissioner Lake.
Thank you. When you say Dropbox, is that like one that you don't have to get out of your car for due to COVID, or would it be actually getting out of your car and putting the envelope in the box? You're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry about that. That's a really great question. The registrar is still finalizing all of the locations, and I don't know if that has been confirmed yet, whether you'll have to get out of your car or if you'll be able to drive by and drop them off. But I'll be happy to follow up and pass the information along through your staff to let you know.
Thank you. I do have a question in terms of what the city of Chula Vista is around the election. I know that in the past, our libraries have been used as drop-off locations. Do we have a sense of whether or not we're planning to do the same, and whether what our communications or outreach plan will be to ensure that we reach as many voters as possible with the issues with the mail and everything that we're hearing from the federal government? I'm sure that folks are going to feel challenged even more so than before to submit their votes and to do it safely. So I'm just wondering what the city specifically is thinking around that.
So yeah, that's a good question. So there will be ballot drop-off locations at 2 of our libraries still, and I believe it's 5 rec centers is what the total was that I had last heard. The Registrar of Voters is in charge of of identifying those locations and securing those locations. So once that's solidified, then we'll put the information on our website. We also plan to have the registrar come to one of our city council meetings in September and talk about what the changes are that our voters will see in Chula Vista and how they can vote safely and you know, feel comfortable with the process. And that's another reason why the registrar is pushing out the information about the Where's My Ballot, where you can sign up for that and you can track your ballot to ensure that it's received and have some comfort with the mail system. The registrar is in constant communication with the Postal Service, and he doesn't anticipate any problems with ballots being received on time. So the ballots have to be, they've always had to be postmarked by Election Day, and typically they have to be received by the Friday after Election Day. But with the governor's executive order, that's extended until November 20th. So that's an additional 2 weeks that the Postal Service has to deliver the ballots to ensure that they're received on time. And I've spoken with the Registrar of Voters, and he doesn't anticipate any problems with that. And so we'll continue to work with the registrar to get the word out to our voters, and then also through our communications. And Anne, if you have anything additional that you'd like to add, please feel free.
Yes, thanks. So we do collaborate with the city clerk and get information from the county that we've typically shared, and we know that it will be in the community's best interest to get as much information out as possible. And I know we're getting information from the county and from the city clerk as well. So we typically do that, but we're definitely going to be doing more, including these kinds of things now.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Dalia, before you ask your question, can I ask, I know since the ballots will be received up until the November 20th, do you have the date for when the election is going to be certified? Has that changed?
That's not changed. It has to be certified 30 days after the election. So the latest that the registrar can certify it will be December 3rd.
Wow, that's tight. Okay. Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you for the presentation. I wanted to ask if the city had any funding or funding allocated specifically for transportation for folks who are not able to take the bus or do not have their own private vehicle to go to a polling site if they want to attend it in person.
That's a really great idea. I'm not aware of any services that the city provides. I don't have those funds in my budget, but it's certainly something that we can look into providing.
And if it's possible, can you report for findings by our next meeting?
Yes.
Thank you.
That's a good idea, or even being able to pick up ballots from folks. I don't know if that gets too complicated, but for folks folks who are at risk that may not want to still leave their homes, to still be able to have some sort of, and I'm sure community organizations are thinking about ways to do this, but it would be really great if our city, you know, could think about that. Go ahead, Commissioner Gonzalez.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, and especially because there's CARES funding, like the CARES funding, I don't know if there's like specific parameters like tied to it, but the pandemic will affect the election. I mean, it already has with its regulations, so I'm sure the funding could leak into that. Or it could be like given to an organization to take point on that transportation. Those are just ideas though. Have no backup.
Those are certainly great ideas. I do appreciate it. There are some challenges with having people pick up other people's ballots and drop them off. But there are safe ways and legal ways to do that. So those are certainly some ideas that we can look into. So thank you for bringing those up.
Okay, Commissioner Ratner, did you have a question? And you're on mute. And Commissioner Felix, did you have a question as well?
I was a precinct inspector, and my understanding is if you drop a vote off for anyone else, a mail-in ballot for anyone else, that's okay as long as that voter has signed their envelope, but then you yourself have to also sign the envelope. So,
Yes,
just
that's
so
correct.
that you know.
Commissioner Gonzalez, did you want to read it? And I also saw Commissioner Felix.
I think there are parameters to that. As someone who's also volunteered, I think it has to be either somebody in the household or someone in some sort of circle. But I know organizations have tried to in the past, and there was some gray area. So that was the only input.
Commissioner Felix?
Yeah, I just have a question. Someone who, what's a process if like a resident, someone who's homeless wants to vote? How does that work? Do they get a provisional ballot or, what's the process there?
People who are homeless can, of course, still register to vote and vote in elections. So they would use the address or the location where they spend the most of their time. And they would register with the San Diego County Registrar of Voters and either go to a polling place or go to the registrar, or if there was somewhere that they could have their mail sent, they can pick up their mail from somewhere to receive their mail-in ballot.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ratner?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that I worked on that myself, and I registered homeless individuals for voting in 2018 and prior, and this last primary. And you can like the Neil Good Center or any of those places, as long as the homeless people have a PO box or something to pick up their mail, or a center, they can register. It's not like they can't just vote like that day. They do have to be registered.
The rules on registration have actually changed since then. So voters can now register on election day and vote provisionally. So it's best that they're registered in advance, because those provisional ballots that are cast take a lot of extra human power to process and to validate. So ideally, everybody would be registered in advance of the election, but there is now the option that they can register on election day and vote on election day. But thank you for that. That's really great information. I'm glad to hear that you did that. Thank you.
I have one extra question. I know that the County Board of Supervisors and the Registrar's Office were approved to have satellite offices in all 5 supervisorial districts. Do we have a sense, or do we know where the one in District 1 is for the registrars?
I don't know, but I'll find that out.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Oh, go ahead.
In the past, sorry, I was going to say, just in the past, the registrar has waited until closer to the election to announce that information, but I'll see if that's available now. We may be able to let people know.
Okay.
Chair, I just have one more question. Will the city also communicate through whatever means possible, like what to do in the event that they feel that there was something that was not supposed to happen at a polling station, or they feel that do they have to contact the county to make a complaint, or how does somebody go about doing a complaint if they feel that they weren't treated properly at a polling station?
Yes, the city consolidates its elections with the county, and so while we manage all of the filing and the paperwork for all of the local candidates, we contract with the county to identify all the polling locations, hire the poll workers, make all of the ballots available, mail out all of the sample ballots. So yes, in that case, if it was related specifically to a polling location, then they could contact the county, but people are more than welcome to give me a call directly, and I'll be happy to help shuffle that process. I know it can be really difficult to navigate between government agencies and who do you report to. So I'm always happy to help with that as well.
Okay, so I believe we now have to take a 2-minute pause to allow public to submit any final comments on the item before we make any final decisions. Commissioners, so as a reminder, please refresh the view on your screen to ensure new comments appear.
I'm going to make an announcement. Carrie, can you please reach out to Summer? She's not able to join.
Yes, I
Thank you.
Hey, Ann, while you guys are waiting on the 2 minutes, you may need to transfer the host stuff over to Carrie if she has any issues getting Summer back in. And so you just need to mouse over Carrie's name, right click, change, so it's something like change role, and then make her a host.
Okay. Thank you. So make Carrie the host?
Yeah, don't do it quite yet because we may still need you for some other stuff, but I just wanted to make you aware that that's what might have to happen.
Okay. So, sorry, commissioners. All right, that's 2 minutes, but since Summer's not with us, let me just figure this out. So Summer's now an attendee. So everybody's learning all we need to know. Okay, here's Summer. Right click, make panelist. Oh, I see her name. Summer, are you back?
Hi, Ann. We're just getting Summer's audio connected.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, commissioners.
Ann, are you able to transfer me the host role if you right click on my name?
Let me try. Hmm. Oh, there. Okay. Sorry. Trying now. Change you to what?
To host, please.
There you are. Got it. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, did we say we were good to go? Or
Well, the 2 minutes were gone. I don't know that if anybody made comments, so I'm sorry. Summer sees that.
Oh, I see.
Glenn, do we
Madam
need
Chair,
to?
this is Carrie. I can tell you there's no comments that were received on item 4.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Since we are not taking any action on item number 4, we'll move into item number 5, discussion regarding civil unrest throughout the country in response to the death of George Floyd and the City of Chula Vista Police Department's current and future policies and procedures. Do we have a staff presentation?
No, Chair, as I recall, we kept this here for any commission discussion.
Yes. So during our last meeting, I see you, Commissioner Gonzalez. During our last meeting, we said that we wanted to be able to continue discussing the issues that have risen from the death of George Floyd and the civil unrest that's been happening in our community. And we also said that we wanted to continue to deliberate or discuss our police role and what their policies and procedures are. And what we talked about was, that Chief Kennedy would be, available for any comment or any questions that we may have. After discussing a little bit as we were preparing for the agenda, what we said or we landed in terms of a recommendation would be that we continue to leave this on the agenda and that we not ask Chief Kennedy to come to every one of our meetings, but that maybe we schedule time with her or someone from the department quarterly, and that in between those meetings we would have time to discuss and deliberate anything that we have questions about and follow up with them then. So that's sort of where we're at with this piece. Commissioner Gonzalez, I saw your hand.
Thank you. So I drafted up like a little script for myself, informative. I was listening to the news and saw that San Francisco Supervisor Sherman Walton introduced an ordinance called the Caution Against Racially Exploitative Non-Emergency, or the Karen Act, which would amend the city's policy code and allow anyone harmed by such calls to sue callers. The ordinance is similar to that of Assembly Bill 1550 to end discriminatory policy calls by categorizing them as hate crimes. So currently, Chula Vista's Police Code 9.04.020 prohibits false police reports, but does not include accountability measures to address discrimination if a person summons law enforcement because they perceive another individual to be a threat due to their racial, religion, outward appearance, or inclusion in a protected class. So while current hate crime law may be applied to a specific crime, it currently doesn't apply to crime of making a false emergency report. Amendments to AB 1550 will address this gap by making clear discriminatory 911 calls qualify as hate crimes and further establish civil liability for the person who discriminately called 911. So I wanted to give a status update. AB 1550 is in the third reading is in its third reading in the process. And the San Francisco ordinance is currently awaiting to be agendized by the Public Safety and Neighborhood Services Committee. So I wanted to talk about, maybe applying this ordinance or a similar ordinance with similar language that San Francisco would to Chula Vista in the case that AB 1550 does not get approved.
Commissioner Kinayu?
I just want to make a point, and I don't know if it specifically applies. I have read that proposal in San Francisco. My concern is that instead of addressing the police response, we're addressing the callers calling in. So we're leaving it upon the dispatchers to make the distinction on what's an appropriate call from someone calling in and whether the person has enough information, which is what the Karen Act values. Yes, people should not be making indiscriminatory calls into the police department, but they do. Sometimes callers that call in don't know how to express what their primary concern is when they see something happening. What we should be focusing our training on is how the police respond to those calls with the information given. We should be training them to understand what the call facilitates, and that should go not just to the police officers, but to the dispatchers themselves. And the idea, the concept behind the police department and how they view these calls. That's just my opinion.
I have to step away for just 1 second. Can I leave Commissioner Branch? It literally will take me 1 second, but I want to allow for continued discussion.
That's fine with me. Does anybody else have a comment? Commissioner Lake?
Thank you. I was on a training and I just tried to look it up really fast, but I couldn't remember where I saw it. But it was talking about how the Nextdoor app, which is a lot of kind of this reporting about neighbors or about not neighbors being in the neighborhood, has put in a little friction. And what they mean by friction is there's a 3-step questions that people need to click on before they report something being suspicious in their neighborhood. And I wonder if that is that friction before calling in to the police, or understanding that is something similar to what Dahlia's speaking to. I certainly hear Nadia as well, and I think they're both valid points.
Are there any other comments? Commissioner Medina?
Hey, good evening. I just wanted to share that in the past few weeks, I've had an opportunity to engage with public comment. So Councilmember Padilla was on KUSI, I want to say yesterday, and he was discussing community policing. And also Chief Kennedy had a commentary in the UT a few weeks back as well regarding policing as well. And so I just wanted to offer those up as opportunities for us as commissioners to continue to be involved in just how our city continues to be involved in this discourse around policing. And so, yeah, I'll just put that out like that. I appreciated having an opportunity to hear Councilmember Padilla speak and on this, and I think that there is a lot of discourse that's unfolding that's extremely restorative and positive, that may have some prospects for maybe some forums or discussions down the road around communities understanding of, I just think there's so much around this concept of defunding, and I think that there can be, through discussion, clarity around how our city's unfolding with policing work.
RC, our chair's back. I just want to make a quick comment about this. Particularly in the Black community, there's lots of concerns about people making these calls to the police that are inappropriate, is one way to put it, discriminatory, another way to put it. I mean, we hear stories of going to Starbucks and having police called on us, jogging, barbecuing, just all kinds of normal everyday activities that have given rise to situations where someone makes a call to the police and unfortunately some of those calls end up in very bad outcomes. So anytime that we can minimize these calls that should not be made in the first place, and unfortunately I'm blanking out of the gentleman who was just shot a few days ago, 7 times in the back. The police were only there roughly 3 minutes before that shooting happened. So unfortunately, every time there's a contact, there's a possibility of a bad outcome. So I'm not familiar with that particular law or that particular legislation that's pending, but it sounds like something that I would like our commission to monitor and get more information about, because as I said before, if we can minimize these calls that are not needed to be made, that they're made in a discriminatory, racist, potentially racist intentions, we should try to reduce that possibility.
Yeah, and thank you, Commissioner Gonzalez, for bringing that up. And I know, so I have a question for our city attorney. I don't know if we are able to make any sort of, take any sort of action, or if it's just something that we'll continue to monitor as part of this, as part of our agenda item. I do want to say that to Commissioner Brandt's point, and the reason for why this bill is in the Assembly and for why it's in being discussed and deliberated in San Francisco is because of what Commissioner Brandt just described, is because there are a lot of, it's not just when there's police interaction. Well, it is, right? Like when there are police interactions, the likelihood of it going, ending in death of a Black or person of color is much higher than any other. And we've seen, white folks and racist folks use this as a weapon against communities of color. So I would definitely like to think about ways that I don't know if it's already an Assembly bill, like how review whether or not like the language would cover us, or if we would be able to if we would have to take a step to pass our own ordinance. But I definitely see the value in exploring, what that could look like, and maybe have a discussion with our city attorney and with our police chief to see, what the response to something like this could be, because it's not, it's racism, right? It's institutionalized racism that is at play when these things happen. And so the more that we're able to, take action and pass, these sort of laws and policies that protect us, I think is always a step in the right direction. Commissioner Gonzalez, and I see Commissioner Felix.
Yeah, and so I agree, even with Commissioner Kina-Youb, I think there's like a forefront that we have to like march against, right? It's like the police system, and then the folks who trigger the calls, which is, one catalyzes the other, and then, communities of color get affected, and affected by losing lives. So I can definitely keep an eye on the bill. I don't know if we want to come back to this when there's an ordinance presented to the committee, the San Francisco committee. I'm keeping an eye on that, and there is already, red line strike-throughs for the bill in the current amended, law at the Assembly level. So there is language out there, and how it applies to Chula Vista can be explored with examples, or without the example from San Francisco.
Commissioner Felix?
Yeah, I have 2 points. In addition to like a legal remedy to this clear systemic problem of reporting people of color, also, what about education too at the city level, like city leaders in law enforcement, maybe even in the attorneys as well, providing some type of guidance to residents. When is it appropriate to call? I know somebody talked about a checklist or something like that. When is it appropriate to call law enforcement, whether it be the emergency number or the non-emergency number? Is something like that possible, to put something together so that people can know, hey, should we call law enforcement? Because there are times when it may be appropriate to call law enforcement, and then there's some other times where it's clearly not appropriate, like some type of guidance. And the second point is, since the Chiefs Advisory Board is the independent, citizen body that we have here in Chula Vista, I think that in addition to having, ongoing dialogue with Chief Kennedy, maybe we can have ongoing dialogue with members of that board as well, so that we can get that independent perspective from residents like ourselves.
Yeah. I do like the idea, and I know that in at different moments we've explored the possibilities of doing more work with other commissions because of the nature of our work. So I would definitely like to explore what that could look like to start a dialogue and conversations with the advisory board moving forward. Any other comments from anyone?
Madam Chair, appreciate the Commission's interest in possible rulemaking in the city regarding false reports, and perhaps strengthening those rules, and certainly would be helpful to monitor what's happening at the state in San Francisco to inform us about that. If you were going to take this up, I would suggest we agendize it kind of on its own, separate from this broader kind of discussion. The way the item's agendized now, it really is about future police policies and procedures, and this is more of a potential punishment for people who engage in any report. And if we were going to have a local rule about that, that could make it a violation of our code or a potential prima facie case in a civil lawsuit. It's kind of its own thing, not so much, future police policies and procedures. So appreciate the monitoring of it. If we want to bring it back, I can help describe that item. I would also suggest that this kind of thing would be a very significant project for the city. A lot of work goes into analyzing the different steps necessary or the different appropriate procedures and protections, of people to do this in the right way. And I think it does make sense for some outreach and evaluation by the commission of the extent to which this is an issue here locally. I imagine it is, but that would be a good basis for, justifying, potentially the amount of work that would go into it, and also information that there might be about places where these laws are in place, if in fact their incidents of calls, are reduced. So certainly monitoring what's going on and bringing it back is appropriate, and will support, to the extent we can, the interests and efforts of the commission. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Just for clarification, you're saying that if we do want to continue speaking or discussing this particular matter, we should agendize it as so separate from general discussions on future.
Yes, you're focusing in on a particular thing that you might do that's a little different than the general description of what's on the item currently. Okay. So for Brown Act purposes and to focus the discussion on it, I would suggest we list it differently. It could even be under listed as an item under Commissioner comments for Commissioner Gonzalez, to bring up herself and in terms of her monitoring it. And point, a referral can be made to staff to actually agendize it for specific consideration. Any number of different ways we could do that, Madam Chair, that we could talk to you about for the next agenda.
Okay, I would like to, I think part of what we had decided, and that could change based on today's discussion or any comments from you all, but I think part of what we said leaving last meeting in terms of this agenda item was that we wanted to continue to have a discussion around all of this. So I would like to continue to leave this on if there's agreement by the group, and then we can, as our city attorney has advised, we can bring back an item or bring it back through Commissioner Gonzalez's comments as we need to. Are we? My question is, are we okay leaving this agenda item as broad as it is so that we can continue discussing anything that may be relevant?
Yeah, and just legally, Madam Chair, I wasn't suggesting you do anything with this item. This item is fine for purposes of these problems. So I'm supportive of this item being continued as it is. I wasn't suggesting you needed to change that.
Okay.
I have a quick, just a quick update, Chair, since you mentioned the Chiefs Advisory Commission or Committee, those meetings are virtual as well. So, and you also talked about engaging with other commissions. So just to let you know that other commissions are starting to meet now and virtually. So it's not the same as being in the same room, but if this is what we're doing for a while, that's something that could be considered, and we would just have a whole bunch of squares on our screens.
Okay, Commissioner Kinayu?
And I'm not too familiar with the Chiefs Advisory Commission, but do they advise on policies and procedures that are put forth through the city during negotiations?
That I don't know. That would be a question for the chief or one of her representatives. And they're happy to join us whenever. The chair and I discussed, did we need somebody from PD at this one? And we were thinking have the discussion and.
Oh, we do have someone from PD.
Hello, everybody.
Oh, Captain Colm, you are here. Yes. Okay, great.
I am here. Yes. I apologize. We got word of this agenda item actually just a few minutes ago, a little bit ago, but now hearing just a little bit of the chat, I understand this is just an ongoing discussion item for the police department, which is wonderful. We invite it, and it's fantastic. I did want to address, if I can, a specific question about the Community Advisory Committee and sort of what it does. And they can advise on policy, and they do with some level of frequency. But that being said, they also don't advise on every policy. We have hundreds and hundreds of policies in the police department. Anybody who's looked at our, I think it's 400 or 500 page policy manual would know, and they are constantly in flux. They are changed all the time. In fact, even today, I read 3 new revisions of new policies. So it's as a result of the sheer number, they don't serve that deep of a role in there. But what we do find is whenever there's a policy that is certainly of significant interest to the community, we found that in, for example, a year or so ago, the immigration policy was a significant interest, and the Community Advisory Committee was heavily engaged in that policy, as were several other community groups and stakeholder and leader organizations as well in the development of that policy. So that is one of their roles. But the other roles that they really do play are critically important. It's not just about policy, but it's also advising the police department and the police chief on the community's needs, desires, and expectations as it relates to almost any area of operations in the police department. Some of the key areas that we find they often provide advice or recommendations on, or even direction on, is in hiring and training practices, is in procedures and tools used by the police department, and in the overall vision, strategy, and direction of the organization, trying to keep the chief of police and the organization closely intertwined with the ever-evolving needs and ever-evolving expectations of the community. So as I understand the discussion in my sort of late coming on board, the idea of the commissioners here working directly with the committee members for the Community Advisory Committee, I think is a wonderful suggestion. I think one that several members of the Community Advisory Committee, I suspect, would welcome. And I think it would be a great partnership. From a police staff perspective, it would certainly even better help us to be more informed and probably more quickly informed as well, because it would expand the diversity of individuals that have a direct line sort of to provide that immediate input on a regular basis directly to the chief of police. So I hope that helps provide a little bit of context for the role. There is an entire webpage up on the police department's webpage about the Community Advisory Committee, which talks about those roles. But I'm happy to take any other questions that anyone should have.
Okay, and thank you for joining us with such short notice. Commissioner Kinayu?
Hello, Captain Collum. Specifically in the hiring, since you brought it up, I was just wondering, has the city of Chula Vista looked at the way that you hire? Because I know that most police departments hire and it's not an open process. So technically, whoever does the hiring is a member of the police department and can use their own discretion to hire new officers. That is based on information that they gather either from their previous employers and from people that know them. It's a very detailed process that usually takes about 3 to 6 months, correct?
That's right.
Yes. So because of that, my concern is if the officer who is hiring the police officers himself has any previous IAs or complaints with the community, how they would view complaints from the community on a police officer as coming from another department. Is that something that's being looked at in terms of how you hire into the Chula Vista Police Department?
Yes, thank you for that question. It is a great question. I could probably go on ad nauseum about the hiring practice. I spent 4 years of my past working in what is sort of the police department's version of the Human Resources Division. But I guess I'd answer that first by clarifying that the only person that hires police officers is the chief of police. The chief of police only hires police officers after a multi-phased process that begins with the Human Resources Department, a separate department from the police department, working through the initial stages of that hiring process. That includes, of course, the review of the application for qualifying criteria, make sure there's nothing disqualifying, immediately evident, a written test process, a physical agility test is part of that at all. And only after that are they forwarded to the police department to begin background investigations. The scope of those background investigations is very, very broad. We pretty much reach into nearly every corner of someone's history. We fill out, each applicant fills out a packet that if you were to print it out is probably 100-something pages, listing right down to your school teachers sort of detail. And certainly any applicant that has any history at a law enforcement agency, we delve deeply into that history as well. We not only request documentation from the other law enforcement agencies, including their performance review files, any internal affairs files, and things like that. But if it's an agency, if we're thinking about hiring that police officer, we oftentimes take steps further and we actually travel to the agency itself. Because it's one thing to just simply request files and receive, or you only get to review what is provided to you. But it's another thing we have found as background investigators to be able to go to the employer, walk around the halls, actually speak to people that perhaps worked with this individual, regardless of whether those people are their supervisors or the chief of that particular agency, and who may have a different perspective on that particular employee than perhaps the agency had officially, or maybe even was willing to share with us. So it is only after that entire process is complete and they have been vetted by the background investigator, a sergeant in the background unit, the lieutenant of the backgrounds unit, and all 3 police captains, including myself. It is only after all of those thresholds are met does that applicant's application essentially land on the chief's desk to review for a potential interview. Then the chief interviews each applicant personally, and after putting the screws to them, so to speak, in the way that our chief of police can do, only then does she make a determination as to whether this is a suitable candidate, number one, a qualifying candidate, number two, and a candidate that fits with our organization and our community. And if she makes that choice, the candidate is then provided a tentative offer of employment. That offer of employment only becomes actual when the candidate then successfully completes a full and detailed psychological examination by a certified psychologist, and then, of course, a medical examination as well. So the only individual that has any authority to hire police officers is the chief director.
Okay, thank you for that information. Are there any other questions? Commissioner Felix?
Hi, Captain. Thank you for taking the time. I just have a question. How can a resident or an individual or group of individuals, if they want to engage in public demonstration, but can they get information from the city as to what steps need to be taken in order to do that? And also, how do we make sure that all residents have the opportunity to engage in their, their free speech and the ability to assemble in a safe manner, and without being, discouraged in any way to do so?
Yes, so I might, so a part of that question, I have the knowledge to answer. There's maybe a little part that I don't, because part of this, understand that the police department does not certify or authorize or permit any kind of civil demonstrations whatsoever or protests. To the degree with which there is some other process built into other city departments that does that, that's the part that I'm not entirely sure. I'm not aware of one, but perhaps the city attorney, when he returns, may have some additional information on that. Now, to the second part of your question, which I think may be the more crux of your question, is how do we ensure that people have the ability to demonstrate and protest and have their voices heard freely, and with capability? Well, so the police department's role is, of course, should there be, in general, of course, is to keep your community safe. And that includes our residents, our businesses, our visitors, but it also includes those who want to, to demonstrate, to protest, to have their voices heard. We consider it a solemn right of every individual for that. And we consider it one of our solemn responsibilities to uphold that right, to number one, to make sure that they have the space and freedom to do that. And number two, to make sure that they are safe in that process. And so the way that we do that is a couple-fold. I will tell you more recently, it's pretty rare that, I'm not even aware of anybody ever in recent past getting any kind of a permit or anything like that to protest. Again, I'm not even sure that the city has a process for that. But protests happen naturally through a variety of means, most often on social media these days. And so there's lots of people that learn about that. And more often than not, we, like others in the city, all around the city, learn about a potential demonstration plan. There was one this past Friday that some of you may have heard or seen in the city of Chula Vista. It started at Memorial Park, and they marched a little bit around the city, and then we're on our front steps as well. And it was actually a well-organized thing. But the only prior knowledge we had of that, for example, was the same knowledge that members of the community had, and it was somebody that brought it to our attention. And so we usually try to reach out to demonstration organizers for a couple of reasons before the event happens. It's certainly not to try to dissuade or anything like that. Our goal really is to understand what they need, so we can determine how best to support and keep them safe and keep the community safe at the same time. And it's also to make sure that they understand or help them understand that there may be limits to what they can do. So, for example, if a demonstrator, an organizer, is planning on marching down the street and blocking a freeway, well, we do have a responsibility to let them know that that might be a violation of the law, and so we wouldn't want them to do that. Now, so it's kind of a discussion. It's intended to be very open and non-threatening process. It's intended to be truly. And to us, it's very valuable that we have an idea what their intent is, because we would hate for something that happens during the course of a demonstration to be misinterpreted in some way. So that's one thing we do. And then on the day or the evening of the demonstration, we usually try to be present for any number of things. We've been present at demonstrations where we have been invited, or at least the organizers have been open to our participation. We've bent a knee on many occasions at many an event. We, me and my role in the police agency, and then my cultural background, my personal familial history, I have a certain, personal stake in some things, and I've participated with legal protests, from time to time as well. But we're also very careful to make sure to give the demonstrators a space. There's been demonstrations that we've been present at, and we've simply asked, hey, do you mind if we participate? And they said, honestly, we prefer not. And okay, we certainly don't want to usurp the message. We want to make sure that you have the opportunity and space to get the message. We have a duty to, sorry, Paula, I can tell we're pressed for time, so I'll just finish up real briefly. We're going to keep them safe. So example, the one on Friday, unbeknownst to us, they decided to block a lot of roads and march down the streets. That actually got a lot of people upset at them. At some point, they were confronted by residents or visitors driving when they were blocking the intersection of Broadway and H for a few minutes. And our goal in that was to simply block traffic so that they didn't get hit by any cars, try to help prevent any incursion by some violent actor in a vehicle, or we don't want some tragedy to happen, and still make sure that they have the room to keep them protected and safe, and so that they can be heard. So, so that's sort of the second half of your question. I think the crux of your question, we're not there to interrupt or stop anything, unless it becomes criminal and starts to victimize other people. In terms of the permitting part, I just, unfortunately, I'm not aware of any process at all.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Captain Colin, for joining us. And I don't know if you were on yet when we mentioned it, we anticipate calling on the police department to join us quarterly so that we can have some time to discuss any questions or concerns that we may have, and then bring them to you, so you don't have to be here every single meeting.
Thank you for that. I'll make sure our chief is aware. Again, we were surprised when we heard about it and then saw it on the agenda, but that's much clearer. I'm a little disappointed because I thought for sure you'd see one of my dogs showing up somewhere around here during this meeting, but perhaps on a future meeting. But I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, in a couple months, we'll maybe get a chance. Okay, so at this time, I will call for, there's no action being taken, but I will call for a 2-minute pause to allow for the public to submit any final comments on the item. As a reminder, please refresh the view on your screen to ensure.
The timer has started. We'll share the screen now.
There's already background noise. If folks want to go on mute.
2 minutes is up.
Commission Secretary, would you announce if there are any comments received for the record?
There were no additional comments received. I'm sorry.
Thank you. So we will move into next item, which is agenda item number 6, discussion and action, including updates from and or the formation of ad hoc committees on event activities for the HRC participation. Do we have any presentations from staff?
We do not have a presentation. I did look, I did check to see if Chula Vista Pride Day had been officially canceled. That was not posted on the website, but I don't know if Commissioner Felix has any update on that. But I mean, the events aren't allowed, so we'd have to call Captain Collenbach to arrest everybody who shows up. So I'm sure it won't be, it's likely not happening.
I can give an update on Know Your Rights.
Go ahead, Commissioner Brand.
So that our subcommittee met, and we're interested in moving forward with a virtual event. We have a request into city staff to have a meeting with somebody in the technology end of things who could tell us what our technology options are for having that kind of event. So I don't know, Anne, if you could help us connect with that person to have a meeting, or who would be the right person, but that's what we're waiting for, is have that opportunity to find out what our technological options are.
Okay. We have done some, city workshops on, for input on city projects, and it's just like this. Well, actually, no, it's a little different. It's through WebEx, but the panelists talk and the participants, they don't have availability to talk like we all do, but there is a possibility. So I can assist you with that.
Okay, so I'll contact you about scheduling a meeting with the subcommittee to talk about this.
Yes. Yes, happy to do that.
Okay, and in terms of the event, have you planned through what the purpose and outcomes or intended outcomes would be, and if you have a date for it?
Let me start with, we don't have a date, probably because it depended on coordinating with city staff, because city staff would have to be involved with running the technology. So that's part of the conversation we were going to have with them. And then in terms of the goals and outcomes, it's similar to what we talked about before, letting people know what their rights are if they are dealing with law enforcement, whether or not they're stopped in their car, they're stopped while walking, they're in their homes, and those kinds of things. And one of the questions related to technology is how we could get questions or input from the public. So we're having this event virtually, what our options are to get that input or questions or from the public that they might have. But the general, basically we'll have panelists, we'll have representatives from law enforcement side, whether it's the DA's office, the chief of police. We haven't, determined the exact people, but generally speaking, it will be a few people from sort of law enforcement side and a few people from the community / public defender, ACLU side of things. Will be other panelists. We'll have questions that we'll pose to them related to some of the issues that we're aware of that people are interested in. And then hopefully we can get some public comments from the public or have them be able to ask their questions in however way the technology allows that to happen. That's the general format.
And there are ways to do that.
If anybody else on the committee wants to say anything, go right ahead to add to what I said.
If not from the ad hoc, are there any questions or clarification points from the commission?
So our next meeting, I'm hoping to have us give our proposed date and explain to you how it's going to work based on the technology. And we'll just start putting together a plan for advertising it, and we'll start reaching out to the participants around that time.
Okay, I think I think what would be helpful, if I may, would be to put together just to make sure, and I don't know if we are able to, but if the ad hoc could put together like a written document of what, you know, what the, like who the panelists would be, what the, again, like what the goals and purpose would be of this, so that we have an opportunity to weigh in on the actual plan. And maybe, you know, if there's anything to flag or any adjustments that could be made, to be able to give the commission an opportunity to do that. I mean, we obviously have, you know, all of our trust in the committee that's working on this, but I think it would be great in terms of accessibility and like our ability to work together to, you know, sort of understand the plan. Are you thinking that it would be in between our next meeting, or would we have an opportunity to weigh in at the next meeting before this is like put on the calendar?
In my opinion, we would come with a proposed date and plan to the next meeting that's not been set in stone. So for example, we'll say, you know, we're proposing to have this on, I don't know, December 1st. This is what we're planning to do. These are the people we propose to invite. This is what the event will look like, and, you know, related to how the technology permits. And then at that time, the whole committee could weigh in on what we're trying to do, and then we can adjust it as necessary, but certainly not have this go on, you know, for too much longer.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I have a question. I know we've gone back and forth in the past and around in regards to whether or not we should have police presence during our Know Your Rights. And I think, you know, thinking about where we're at with what's happened in the community, I wonder if this is an opportunity, right? And considering like that we have like active communication with the police department, if it would make sense for us to use this forum as an opportunity to sort of more gather information from the community on issues that they care about, or issues that they so that ahead of having someone from the police department in the room, so that folks feel, you know, comfortable and safe to voice whatever that may be, make it more of a community space, and then be able to bring that information back to the police department, you know, for further discussion. So I don't know if that's something that you all had a discussion around, but I would like to explore what, you know, and I could be totally off on this, but I think it might make it so that more folks participate and feel safe in a space that we build.
Well, let me just say quickly, the way this was originally conceived way back when was for the community to get information from law enforcement about what their rights are and be able to ask questions of law enforcement. You know, also having people, like I said, from the public defender side and the ACLU to also weigh in. So both sides of the perspectives will be viewed. If we want to change it to something, as you described, where it's more of a community space without law enforcement and present, that's different than what it was originally conceived as. But if that's what the commission really would like to happen, then we would just have to make it a different type of event. So I guess it's up to you know, other people what they think.
I think I agree that the presence of law enforcement may be some type of deterrent for people to be as candid as possible, but I think that their presence is essential for what we're doing here. The reason being because I mean rights, all they are, it's substantive law, right? And they're in stuffy law books, but it's law enforcement who's gonna actually be the ones engaging with the residents and enforcing the law. I think that law enforcement is a key element for what we're trying to do to really promulgate this information, to give the information from the people that they're enforcing the law, and the way that our residents are going to be interacting with the law is going to be in most cases with law enforcement. It's kind of good to hear from that perspective from the law enforcement side, along with knowing their substantive rights and which the ACLU can provide and other people can provide. But it's good to know from the enforcement side as well, because at the end of the day, that's when our neighbors are gonna flex their rights, is when they're interacting with law enforcement.
Commissioner Kinayu.
I think one of the thought processes behind it too was to invite leaders in the community that have spoken to law enforcement about the concerns. People like Tasha Williamson, Leila Aziz, people that have actually made those connections that the chief herself stated that she's reaching out to sit down with and have these ideas. The reasoning behind that was for them to speak first and have the chief respond to those concerns, rather than bring up her point of view first and then allow them to respond. The idea is to have the community voice those concerns first, and then the chief would then respond to them.
Yeah, and I hear that. And if you all have created a plan and have thought it out, with more detail, I don't want to derail that. I think my concern would be that for us, right, and even in the discussions that we've had, that I would like to think through a little bit more on like what community solution or community oriented solutions oriented by community would look like first, before allowing the our chief to speak in that space. There's a power dynamic, and there's I want to hear from our community first. We don't, we have a lot of concerns, but we don't know if those are the same concerns that are in our community, specifically in Chula Vista, right? And I agree, Tasha Williamson and Leila Aziz are amazing leaders in the community. I don't know if they, like, what their relationship with the police department and with people within Chula Vista is. So I think like that also has to be considered. Like our role, more than anything, right, is to hear from community members within Chula Vista and to, in some ways like bridge or find solutions, bring solutions to the table, or think through like what the best way would be to allow for voices to be heard within like that space. And I'm like, this is a regional issue, right? Like, so we're all affected by it. So I don't know. I don't want to like belabor the point or anything like that, but I think those were just like concerns of mine. And again, if you all have like thought it through, then I trust you all to make those decisions, and then just sort of let us know how we can plug in.
Well, I just said right now there's only 3 of us on the committee, so if you want to join us, you could do that too. Just throw it out there.
Yeah, I thought I had joined and I wasn't included in the meetings that you all had, but it's totally okay.
I apologize if oversight if that is there was an oversight, then I guess I didn't realize. So I will make sure you're invited to the next meeting.
Yeah, I would like to hear from other commissioners that may not be part of the committee, but I think everyone's input is important here. Would you all share your perspective on this? Commissioner Medina, Commissioner Lake, Commissioner Ratner, Gonzalez, Gutierrez.
I'll just speak on my behalf. I just want to respect the work of the ad hoc, and continue to support the work they're doing. And if they need to bounce some ideas off of, I feel I could definitely be there for that. But yeah, that's where I kind of am seeing this right now.
Okay. Commissioner, like I saw you sort of nodding your head, and Commissioner Gonzalez, I think you as well. Okay.
Yeah, I just, the only thing I was really thinking about was the format and how comments would be collected and whether it would be recorded or not, whether this is going to be out there for posterity, or is it going to be something that's going to be viewed and then done. So I was just thinking about the format.
Okay. Okay. If there's nothing else in terms of the Know Your Rights event, most of the events that we had on this chart have been canceled, so we don't have to address them now. And is there anything else that might have come up that we might have missed in this, or are we all good to wrap this item up?
I think Peggy was trying to raise her hand, but she didn't.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't really matter. I mean, you asked for comment, and I guess I didn't know how to do this right. But no, I was just going to say, being relatively new, I don't remember when the wheels were first initiated on this, but it seems like Commissioner Branch mentioned there was a certain intent and direction that this committee was going in. And it seems that, they've been meeting about it and have certain ideas already. So I respect that process, even though, valid concerns have been brought up. But I trust the ad hoc committee to do what they feel is the right thing to do.
Okay. Okay, so we'll wait to hear an update from you all at our next meeting. Thank you all for the work on that. So then, and I'm sorry, I can't remember if we did public comment on this already.
Not yet. Not yet. I'll start the clock. 2 minutes. That's 2 minutes is up.
Commission Secretary, would you please announce for the record if there were any comments received on this item?
There was a comment received. It wasn't regarding the ad hoc information though, so I'm not quite sure how we do that. Carrie, can you maybe help out with this one?
Yes, just one moment. Let me
Okay.
look at the comment. The comment is, excuse me, is from Margaret Baker. It's a question actually asking if the city will be recognizing Welcoming Week. So if anyone on the commission or staff knows the answer to the question, to announce that now, or perhaps staff could follow up with Ms. Baker later with that information if it's not available at this time.
Thanks a lot.
I was planning to give an update under staff report.
Okay. Okay, so we'll be addressing that under staff comments. If there's nothing else, we'll move on to other business. So for chair comments, I wanted to provide the commission with an update. I know that we've had several conversations around the removal of the Christopher Columbus statue, and I know that there's been some questions on like what the continued process is there. And I think based on, we've continued to engage in conversations with city staff, and it continues to, there continues to be some concern on the fact that we are not able to still hear from the public in the best way. And so that item is ready to be heard by the council, but we're holding off until we're able to have community members, and be able to share their concerns in a similar way to how we heard comments from the community during our meetings a few months ago. It almost feels like, a year ago. It's been, but I don't even. So anyway, I just wanted to give an update on that. It's not that we're, sort of not paying attention to it. It continues to be an important issue, and I, as your chair, continue to hear and ask from our staff on the commission on where we're at on this item. This is sort of where we're at. So just wanted to give you all that update. And that's all that I have. Thank you to the staff for helping put this meeting together and for helping us craft the agenda and the robust presentation that you gave on all the work that the city is doing. And, Carrie and Summer and City Attorney Guggens for taking the time to be here with all of us tonight. So that's all that I have. I'll turn it over to commissioner comments. Is that no comments from anyone? Okay. So I'll turn it over to staff comments. Oh. Someone? Was that someone? Or was that, oh, I think it was Ann. I'll turn it over to you, Ann.
Okay, thank you. So I had, I know Mr. Gutierrez participated or listened in on the panel discussion a couple of weeks ago that I gave to actually groups in Florida, community groups in Florida are trying to move forward with some welcoming city efforts. And I thought it was just like a conference call, but it was a panel, and I think 30 people participated. It was very interesting. So represented us there. And yes, I know that Welcoming Week is coming up, and I was just, we definitely will have to do something during that week. I actually need to look and see if we have a council meeting that week, because I think that we're now doing 2 council meetings a month to consolidate the efforts, you can see what has to take place in the council meetings is this format tenfold. So, but we will definitely be, what they have on the Welcoming City website is like what we did last year, some social media, some efforts that way, a press release that we, again, reminding people that we are a welcoming city. We have the certification, still the only city in California that has that designation. San Jose is working on it. So yes, we will be doing, at a minimum, a press release and social media about Welcoming Week. And if there's a council meeting, we'll have an announcement there, or we'll have an announcement at the council meeting sometime around that as well. I'll give information to the mayor. But because it's virtual, there's just, there's not as much we can do. So, but we will be getting the word out.
And I know previous years we've made, the city council has made there's a proclamation already made for like Welcoming Week. Is that still the case?
We can definitely do that as well. Yes, thank you. So we do have a meeting on September 15th, and I think that either that week or the next week is Welcoming Week. So with your request, I can ask that we bring that resolution forward.
Okay. Yeah, and I think it would be great if we could do some sort of announcement in either multiple languages, or at the very least in Spanish, from either city staff or our mayor. I think that would be.
Sure. Thank you for the idea. So that's all I had.
There's a few other things under staff comments, not sure who was bringing them up. Qualified electorate.
Oh, that was the running list so that you asked that we keep track of things so we don't lose them. And some of these are basically on hold just for the same reason other things are, because of the pandemic.
Oh, yes, and I do remember, Anne, we talked about the Welcoming City communicate. I don't know if it was the communications plan, but the language access.
So the one of the we do have our Welcoming City certification, but we need to provide our language access plan to them. That I've been collaborating with colleagues to pull together all of our various language access efforts. So you may know that some are required for federal funding. So there's a piece of the language access program with my colleagues who do get federal grants. And then there's, of course, our practices of bilingual pay with more than 200 staff members in mostly Spanish, but also Tagalog, Farsi, American Sign Language, staff who speak those languages. And then what the city commits to do regarding language access. So I'm continuing to pull that together, and I'm planning to have a draft to you by the end of the year. They've extended our deadline when we can turn it in to later on this year. So I'll have a draft that you all can comment on, and then we'll finalize it, and then that will be our official language access plan.
Okay. Thank you, Anne, for that update. Any other staff comments? Okay, if there is nothing else, it is 8:26, and I am adjourning this meeting to the next regular meeting scheduled on Thursday, September 24th at 6 p.m. in Conference Room A103, Public Services North Building A at City Hall 276 4th Avenue in Chula Vista, California.
Or this way.
Or virtually.
Yes. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
How do I get out of here?